But one thing that can often sting you is the baggage fees. And I know every airline has got different rules on this. So travel expert Ash Bhardwaj is helping us navigate it and hopefully save a little bit of cash too. Good morning.
Good morning.
I mean, here's the thing. It is so confusing because everyone seems to have a different policy on this. And actually, if you do get caught out, it ends up costing you more than the flight itself sometimes.
Yeah, and you may remember the glory days when you'd pay for one ticket price and everything was included. Your seat reservation, your checked luggage, maybe even a couple of G&Ts on the flight. But budget airlines have changed all that, and now they charge for hand luggage. And yes, you're right, they all have widely different sizes for what they allow on, not just your free item, but also your paid item, or even a larger paid item. And if you don't stick to these rules, you can get a hefty charge at the gate. Some budget airlines charge £50 to £75 per cabin bag that goes over, and for some full-service airlines, they'll charge you up to £200 to stick it in the hold. But legislation is starting to push back on it. In Europe, the Spanish government has recently fined 5 airlines £150 million for practice.
Was it 5? I thought it was more than that. I thought it was 7 airlines, was it? But yeah, quite a few have been fined for that at the moment. OK.
Well, what has happened is the European Consumer Organisation, BEUC, they've actually filed a complaint with the European Commission, and they've accused 7 airlines of exploiting customers, including Ryanair, EasyJet and Wizz Air. Now, the EU is currently looking at standardising the free cabin bag across all the different airlines because they use different terminology and sizes. And that would affect UK passengers as well if we're travelling to or from an EU destination using an EU airline. But the budget airlines say that their baggage policies comply with the law while keeping fares low. But they're facing mounting pressure to change their practices.
Yeah, I find that fascinating, the idea of it all being exactly the same, because you do feel like you turn up at the gate sometimes, and it's you know, and it's so important to.
You're showing a lot of self-control right now because you've been ranting about this all morning.
This is restraint. Well, it is. I mean, it's not just about the money too. It's that idea, you know, people are queuing up and then they have to kind of measure in the bags, and it's all kind of a little bit humiliating, though. Let alone how much it costs when you do get there. So it'll be interesting to see if these rules do have an impact.
Yeah, you're right, and it is really stressful, that whole process. What has been banned is something called drip pricing. So drip pricing is when you look at a particular price, but by the time you get to the checkout, so many obligatory things have been added on that it ends up being significantly more than what you thought it was. Now, as of 6th of April this year, any unavoidable add-on fees must be included in the price. So these are things like airport taxes or mandatory booking fees. So let's say you're flying from Manchester to Malaga for £30, but there's £15 of taxes and mandatory booking fees. That ticket must now be advertised as £45.
Right.
So you're not surprised by that at the end. However, there is a catch for baggage. This new rule doesn't apply to optional extras, so which seat you select or for adding bags. Airlines can still offer those later on in the process. And that means you could find a £30 flight, but by the time you've selected your seat and added on luggage, it could easily be £100.
Yeah.
And that makes it really tricky for consumers like us to find the true cost of a cheap flight.
So let's just focus on the cabin bag right now.
Yeah.
Then. So you've got some examples what's going on with different airlines. You've got your bag with you. It looks like you've just arrived from a holiday yourself, Ash. Thank you for popping in. What are the rules now? What's currently?
I think let's start with terminology. So you get one free item, which is sometimes known as your small cabin bag or your handbag. That's always included. And then there's usually the optional price to get a larger cabin bag, although with some airlines that's included. Remember, every airline rule is different, and I'm going to go through some examples and double-check directly on your airline's website. So this suitcase here, got a tape measure. It's 55 centimetres deep, including the wheels, important. It's 40 centimetres wide, and it's 23 centimetres in depth this way. Now, on British Airways, this would be counted as their included cabin bag. So if you book with British Airways, you get an included cabin bag, and this would be fine for that.
That would fit nicely.
That would fit nicely. On EasyJet, you would have to pay for this, but it would still be the right size you take on with EasyJet. For Ryanair, this is actually too large, even if you pay for it.
So you pay extra, you pay the extra fee, but actually it's a smaller bag than that again.
The allowed one for the paid one with Ryanair is smaller than that, so they wouldn't let you take it on. For Wizz Air, This is exactly the right size, and it's the depth this way that really catches people out.
Yes.
23 centimetres. So the challenge there is if you overpack it and it gets a little bit too wide, when you get to that dramatic moment where you have to check it in and see if it's, go to the metal cage and they jiggle it in, then they might charge you extra for this.
But also, luggage is expensive. You think you've just got one bag for travel. It sounds like you need at least
one
four.
for each airline.
Oh, goodness.
This is the thing. And people do exactly what you've done. They come in with their tape measure into the shop to make sure they've got it exactly right. And then suddenly, oh, no, it's a different airline. And it's just that little bit smaller.
You don't take your tape measure into a shop.
Well, I've given up now. I have no idea. It's just it feels like a free-for-all. But, so if you are travelling and you do want to save a bit of money with this, what can you do?
So first, check luggage, the luggage that goes into the hold. Always, always, always pay for that online before you get to the airport. It's 50 to 70% cheaper than paying for it at the airport. If you're worried about, even with that you're going to go over the weight of the luggage, you can try and wear really heavy items. I have actually seen people wear ski boots onto a plane to avoid that 5 or 6 kilos. Not very comfy.
Kind of, yeah. Great for a summer holiday, though.
And then for the size, rolling or using compression bags. So this is a compression bag. There's about 10 T-shirts in here. To look at how well it's actually compressed, that's what it would look like without the compression done. So you can see that really gets the size down. But if you don't have those, I use a waterproof bag. So I've got loads of bits and pieces in there. Squash it down, roll it over.
This is you, isn't it, Ash?
That's you away for a full week, isn't it? That's it.
Spare shorts in there. And there you go. And then you can take that online. And there's other bits and pieces you can do too, like if you've got a couple of small little bottles at home, rather than buying those small travel-sized things or having to take your full one, empty it into one of those little containers. Then you can take that in your carry-on luggage with under 100 mils.
Luggage pooling you were talking about at the top of the show. What's that?
Yeah, so luggage pooling. So this is when, let's say, you each allow 20 kilograms for your hold luggage. Together, if you're on the same booking, that would be 40 kilograms. If your airline allows it, rather than you each having to be 20 and 20, one of you could be 15 and one of you could be 25.
Share it out a little bit.
Share out the weight.
So if we were travelling, you could, because I'm just looking at these bags and thinking, the shoes aren't going in here, the hairdryer's not going in here, but you could take it.
Yeah,
you'll have a bit of space.
But do it early so we don't have to do the faff by the cabin checkout when you open your case.
You open and everybody sees all your bits everywhere.
I've been there.
Avoid that.
What a team.
Get advice.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Ash. It's very confusing. Are you happy with that now?
No. Not happy still,
Okay.
but, good advice nonetheless.
It's an issue for you, but we know an issue for a lot of holiday makers is when luggage gets lost. We did cover actually this on the show last week. Really helpful advice on our website on that, bbc.co.uk/morninglive.